What's going on, everybody? What is happening? We've got people who are joining. There's a question in the Q&A, so feel free to go ahead and share your answer in there. Just kind of your top challenges with scaling your SMB. We will do intros in just a minute, but before we get started, it's obviously Halloween. I am dressed up as a tech executive. Mikayla, what are you dressed as?
Yeah. IT manager.
You're dressed up as an IT manager. It's very convincing. I feel like this looks like exactly what you do. Feel free to share in the chat what you are dressed up as, or what maybe you or your family are dressed up as. It's nothing if we can't have a little bit of fun, right? I'm not seeing anybody type yet, so everyone's going to have to come out of their shell a little bit. Why are you joining a webinar on Halloween if you don't want to share what you're going to dress up as? Later, I'm going to be dressed as Donatello. I meant to be Donatello, but now I'm going to be Donatella because I waited until the last minute to get my costume, and there were only the girl ones left in a very, very small size. So hopefully my 5-year-old is cool with that.
After this, I will be dressed up as the mom of a 13-year-old. And she will be dressed as a shark. She found a shark onesie costume, and that was it.
Yes, that's all she needs, right? I love it. Well, welcome everybody. We are so excited to talk to you today. I am here with Mikayla Barber. I am Christina Brady, and we are going to talk about just challenges with growing SMB teams and some of the strategies that we have either deployed or can deploy to help you as you are on your scaling journey. So obviously, as I said, I'm Christina Brady. I'm the SVP of Sales at Spekit. We are a tool that helps to make every one of your employees the absolute best version of themselves by providing contextual learning in the flow of work that is specific to employee and organization. And I am honored to be joined by one of our incredible customers, Mikayla Barber, who is the IT manager at REE Medical. Mikayla, on the spot, fun fact about yourself. Tell her I was going to do that. Look, watch it hit her.
I can deadlift 390 pounds.
What?
Yes.
Wow. See, you just had that tip of the tongue and I wasn't ready for it. I love it. Look, you've got some fans in the chat. Talk about women power. Yes. See, I knew that this was going to be good. I've already learned something. I feel like we can retire for the day.
Yep.
But truly, what are we going to talk about today and what is our agenda? It is no secret that scaling any org is really, really difficult, but scaling an SMB org is really, really hard. It's hard in a great market, but when you're in a difficult market, it's even harder. Think about some of the challenges that we have to face, right? You have to be able to find product market fit and sell in spite of not having it. You have limited resources, you have limited operational support, you have limited capital. You have to identify your buyers, your champions, your sales process. You have to find a way to train on it, evolve it, all at scale. And there's little to no one in seat to actually help you do that. You have to generate demand for your product with limited or no budget. You have to find your pipeline absent of historical data, and you have to just guess all the time. Don't even get me started on having to create collateral case studies absent of enough existing customers to mine that data from. And then there's hiring, training, retaining your folks. And you have to find a way to curb churn. You have to find a way to keep your customers. You have to find a way to grow them. And as I delve deeper and deeper into the SMB space, there's two main areas where we see a lot of burn. And one of them is obviously your payroll, right? Your payroll is your number one kind of most expensive source. And second, actually winds up being tool and tech stack. It winds up being all of the different tools that you have to purchase because you are trying to operate efficiently. And it's really difficult to do that when you're spending a lot of money on tools, trying to train people on those tools, and then trying to train them on how to actually do the job. So let's hone in, Mikayla, on one of the big challenges, right? As a scaling organization, you have limited people, you have limited technology, you're trying to buy more, you have limited infrastructure resources. Now, I know you've currently purchased Spekit. We're really, really happy to have you as a brand new one of our customers. And for you, why did you feel like when you were evaluating tools to help with this, why did you feel like this was maybe a good step in the right direction to helping to tackle some of these really, really tough challenges?
Yeah, so Spekit, it helps cover a few of the issues that we saw most frequently. Some of our biggest struggles have been undocumented knowledge, training new team members, and inefficient processes. So teams are just doing a bunch of time-consuming manual tasks. So on the training front with Spekit, there we also have an LMS, which is great for that first week, first month training where you're sitting down and learning your role in the company and you're learning, what it is that you're supposed to do. But I think everyone has experienced when you go to sit down and actually do those things, you forget everything that you learned or small parts of it. So having Spekit there right where you need it when you're trying to do your job, it really helps be able to just have that help right there. It's like someone over your shoulder saying, next, you're going to click here and then you're going to do this. So it really helps with training new hires. And they're all getting the same message because you can assign specs to certain teams. So everybody's getting the same message at the same time. And it also takes a lot of the drain off of the managers and the IT support who are also, trying to do their job as well. And with undocumented knowledge, one of our biggest struggles has been that the people who know their job, they just know it because they've been doing it and, because they're in the fray doing the work. And so when we get new people, it's, do we take them away to go train the new employees? And then that's time spent not doing their work. So with Spekit, we can take that knowledge and put it into bite-sized learning for them to be able to share that information and document it in a place where they need it.
Yeah. You also made a really good point there about sort of existing employees. And I think there's this idea that perpetuates that your employees that have been there for a long time know all of the things. And in a world where you never have to change anything or do anything different, or in a world where the market doesn't shift or your customers don't have additional needs or something doesn't get difficult, sure, like the idea of the tenured employee that can be the mentor or the guide or the resource, the know-it-all folks, the moment that you have to change or pivot, that individual is right back in the bucket of, now I don't know and I'm having to learn again. And the forgetting curve is hitting me all over again. And so as you think about even just tool agnostic, like the limited resources that you have as a high growth company that is scaling with a bit of a unique customer subset, how has having limited resources really been just a challenge for you and your teams?
Yeah. When we start out, I've been with REE since 2019. I think I was like the 20th something employee, and we're at around 170 now. So we've been through those struggles, and the technology or the infrastructure that works for 20 employees is definitely not the infrastructure that works for 170 employees. So those small tasks that might seem not that big of a deal when you're dealing with smaller numbers all of a sudden take up all of your time and your productivity when you're working with larger numbers. So we had to find a way to automate a lot of our manual tasks because that's been one of our biggest time sucks and our struggles with productivity is just the amount of manual work that people are doing.
Oh, the amount of manual work that people are doing. You're so right to think about the fact that what works for 20 might not work for 30 or might not work for 40 or might not work for 50, certainly not for 120 or 150. And so the way that you have to evolve, you're often looking at the person or the people next to you to be like, do you know what to do? Do you know what we should do? I don't know what we should do. Maybe we should just try this. So there's a lot of trial and error. And so I heard you say a lot of great things. I heard you talk about making sure that you can prioritize tasks and know what tasks to prioritize. I heard you talking about making sure that you are covering what is in your lane and not covering what is outside of your lane. And then you talked a little bit, obviously, about Spekit, but I think any tool that you purchase, right, you have to invest in the technologies that are going to make teams productive today and effective today. And then you have to think about, are these tools going to scale with us? Am I buying a tool now that's not going to work later? And do I even know how to evaluate that? Because especially for SMBs, you can't afford to spend millions on a tech stack when you haven't even made millions and millions yet in revenue. And so, how can you think about what tools do we purchase that we can buy today that will grow and evolve with us without having to continue to constantly add to our tech stack? Because that's usually what happens, right? As you buy one tool and you think this is going to be it, this is going to be the tool, this is all we need. And then once you buy that tool, it's like, great news. You now need 6 more tools to make this tool work. I hope you have the money for that. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And then you're like, they didn't tell me when I was buying this that now I was going to have to buy 6 more tools to make this effective. What the heck? And so asking those questions in the buying process when you're looking at tools is like, how is this going to scale? Is this an out of the box solution? Do I have to buy other things in order to make this work? Because like you said, we have 20 people today, but now you're at 150, 160, 170. Those tools may not work anymore. And now you have to offboard a tool. You have to rip and replace. And that's super painful. And this kind of then brings us to almost leaning into another challenge, right? Which is, look, the infrastructure that you currently have at your organization, whether you're at 20 employees, 150, 550, 2,000, the current infrastructure that you have might not support the increased demand and the increased growth. So as you start to think about tools in your tech stack, how do you start to think about tools and whether or not they're going to grow properly with your company? Like, what's the evaluation process that you feel like you go through as you're sort of facing this challenge?
Well, one of the biggest struggles we've had is not only the uniformity of information for the employees, but where do they have to go to get that information? You know,
Yes.
if we're in Salesforce and they're about to go through a process, maybe there's a call they have to make or something they have to do they have to leave Salesforce to go and hunt for that information? Is the information that they find, is it old? Is it new? Has it been updated? Does everyone else look at that exact same information, or are they looking at something they had downloaded previously and don't have the updated version of it?
Yeah. Well, because we all know that employees like to take the resource they get and they download it on their computer and then they just keep that in the folder. And then when you're trying to launch a new resource to them, it's okay, I'm going to send them an email or I'm going to put it in the LMS and I'm going to launch it and I'm going to, I'm going to track people and see if they actually look at that. And you know, as well as I do, people just go back to the folder of their tools and they use it. And that can actually get you into a little bit of trouble. And so the thing that we are kind of talking about is you realize that every one of the tools that you have has to scale. What does that actually look like? And that's based on what do your employees do? So the tools that you're buying for your sales teams, right? If you're a smaller SMB organization, your sales team is pretty tiny. It might feel really easy to just buy a couple really zippy tools and say, you know what, this is going to solve it for now. And then later we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And, everybody in the room, have you ever had that moment where then you are at the bridge that you said that you would come to and you are like, okay, now we have
We're just there immediately.
Yeah, exactly. And a question that I think is important to ask here is when you realize that you're in that moment of potentially bloated tech stack, how difficult is it for you to be able to pivot and eliminate some of the technology that you've purchased that you feel isn't necessary? And I know that that's not one that's on our list, but I'm curious, so I'm going to ask you.
That's a great question. It's something that we're in the middle of right now because we're in the middle of growth. We're adding new technology, but trying to find technology that will, knock out a couple things at once. I think the biggest thing for us is being able to leave one place as infrequently as possible. Can we integrate this? Do they work together? Does this cover, multiple needs at once instead of that nitpicking, oh, this will be okay for now and this is okay for now and this kind of does that, but we need something else to cover this. Just understanding the team and their need, but also seeing how that relates to the bigger picture. It should be one fluid kind of tech stack that all works together.
Yeah. I mean, and you're speaking a little bit there to the idea of sort of bite-sized learning in the flow of work. And when you're evaluating tools, a lot of times, especially if you're in hyper growth mode, you don't always know the questions to ask, right? Like you don't necessarily know what you're going to need later. You don't know what technology exists. So it has to come down to tool agnostic, right? Take all the tools, all the tech, all the cool things that you can buy out of the picture and just focus on what do we need today. And you mentioned a great thing about what do we want from our employees? We want our employees to not have distraction. I think the recent data on distractions is every distraction loses 23 minutes of productivity. So, okay, we want our teams to be able to stay focused. And that means not code switching between 5 or 6 different tools to maybe just handle one customer interaction. So I need to invest in a tool, like a just-in-time tool that's going to allow me to stay where I am and have everything that I need brought to me instead of going to find it. But really honing in and making that list of tools aside, what do we need to be successful? What do we want our employees doing every single day? And what could get in the way and hinder that success? What could happen that would stop our employees from being successful, right? Okay, they don't have the training they need. That would hinder them. They don't have the talk tracks they need to talk to either customers or prospects. That would hinder them. If they're having to get distracted all day trying to find the most recent wording, right? Like that's going to distract them. So it comes down to those core things. And then you fit the tool to the need versus SMBs so often do the opposite, which is, ooh, cool tool. Let's see how we could use that. And it has to be the other way around, which I think is an incredible point.
Yep.
I'm checking the Q&A just to make sure. Okay, no questions so far. Do not forget, if you have any questions whatsoever, Mikayla and I are here for you today. We're here for you before we gorge on all of the candy. Switching topics a little bit, one thing that I think is really interesting about your company is you have a fairly limited customer base, right? Like you work with veterans, there's a limited pool of them. And so this idea typically of unlimited white space that we see a lot in technology doesn't really exist there in the same way. And so can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to identify repeatable ways to expand revenue when you have a limited customer base? How do you empower your people to feel like they have control over revenue when they can't just go out and keep finding new customers outside of the base? What does that look like for you today?
Yeah, so we are right now we help veterans, right? So we can't necessarily step outside of that at the moment. So our best route for expanding our customer base per se is to expand the products that we're offering to them. Not all veterans have the same need. There are multiple ways that we can help veterans. So we need to identify the different ways that they need help and then be able to expand our technology to help them in those ways. And having Spekit, as a just-in-time training, as we're growing in Salesforce and growing our product offerings, we can easily adapt to that change with Spekit. We can send out announcements on new processes or new product offerings and then immediately have those specs available. We can, if we create a new team for a new product offering, we can assign them to specific specs so that they immediately know how to do their job and how to help the veterans the best that they can.
Oh, like it's an incredible answer, because I think what you're honing in on is you obviously have an incredible amount of folks that you can reach out to, but the right kind of customer data is going to be really, really important, because depending on who you hire, and it's most likely folks in industry, but there is an element of training there that has to happen. And everybody who works in your organization has to understand the customer maniacally, and they have to do that at scale, and they have to do it really, really quickly. And it's very difficult for any organization to train their employees on their customer, because that information currently lives everywhere. And you're trying to understand, who are our customers? How does our product help them? How am I supposed to speak to that? What information don't I have? And if you don't have accurate customer data that is also at your fingertips and accessible at any point in time, it becomes very, very difficult. Especially, you mentioned earlier, training and onboarding.
Yeah.
right? So using the right kind of customer data to train on the customer and the problem that you're solving is important. But if you don't have a great way to onboard your employees, that becomes even more difficult.
Yes.
And so if we think about more challenges with growing SMBs, operational efficiency. I know that this is very, very close to your heart. It sounds easy, it sounds simple, but I think even the largest organizations in the world really struggle with operational efficiency. Who are the people? What is the data? What are the processes? How do we communicate that to everyone? Does it exist in our LMS or our KMS or our CMS? Or is it in that email? Or is that policy actually sitting in Slack? Or is that in Salesforce.com chatter? Or I think it's in a deck that's in a drive somewhere that maybe we rolled out. But when's the last time somebody updated that? And they're not even here anymore. This was a year ago and people are still using this, right? So it's like the more that you dig into overall operational efficiency, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree, but if you don't have that, you're not going to succeed. You have to have that level of efficiency. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you might succeed, but it's going to be real tough.
It's going to be real and frustrating.
Yes. Very frustrating. Yes.
Absolutely. So as you think about the fact that one, it's easier said than done, what do you feel like are maybe some of the benefits of having a just-in-time solution that makes it easier to have operational efficiency at scale?
Yeah. The just-in-time solution for efficiency is huge, especially for us. I know that I've thought of a ton of use cases, and I'm sure there's more that I'll come up with over time. But one of the things, the main thing is if you're growing and growing quickly, the changes are constant. And whether that's your policies or your offerings or your procedures, everything is constantly changing. And even people are moving to different departments or doing different jobs throughout the company. So there's just constant change. And you need to be able to give the employees a sense of, even though it's changing, I know where to go to find the information that I need. So with Spekit, the information's right there where they need it inside the CRM or whatever it is that you're using. It can also be spread across different domains. So if they're in Office 365 or in Salesforce or in HubSpot or whatever it is, Spekit can be there to help them. So no matter what tool they're using, Spekit is still there to assist them. You can also use announcements in Spekit. Those are probably one of my favorite things.
Your favorite? I had a feeling it would be. I was like, with what you're doing, you're like, everyone look at this.
Yeah, everyone pay attention.
Yeah.
So, if we change a procedure on how a call is supposed to be made, we have to make 5150 calls for veterans, and there are specific legal procedures that we have to follow in those calls. And so if there's a change to that, those calls are made every day. They need to be notified immediately. And just sending out an email to everyone isn't really going to cut it, because what if you sent that in the morning and someone doesn't check their emails until the evening, right? They need to know right now. And so we can put out an announcement, and we can make that announcement geared just toward the people who are making those calls or the people that need to know about the change. And it shows up on Salesforce right where they need it to, and says, hey, pay attention, there's a change that's been made and we need you to implement it immediately.
Yeah. And as we kind of turn that question on its head, this idea of a just-in-time solution in the flow of work, these are new terms that we're starting to hear become a lot more popular. But then that also means there's a lot of companies that are not operating with that kind of enablement and scaling and operational efficiency. As you think back to 2019, 2020, 2021, just like these crazy formidable years, what did it look like prior to having a tool that allowed you to operate efficiently? Like, how would you go about changing, and what did that look like? And what are some areas that potentially tripped you up? Like, what made it so painful that as an organization you said, we have to solve this right now? What was some of that pain?
I know I probably said this already, but the biggest pain point was that nobody knew where to look for anything. You know, you think, oh, we're all going to use this one shared drive, right? But like we said before, people download the information, or it was in an email that I got 3 weeks ago that I just have saved randomly, and then after a month, it's so hard to find. Just not knowing where the information is and where to find it, it just creates confusion for the employees. It causes delays in their work, and there's no uniformity of the information that everyone's getting. It's not the same. And so it really just causes a lot of frustration and mistakes that are made easily. For example, we have a guide, a 60-page PDF guide that here's all the information you need to know about this subject, right? But it's broken down by different disabilities, like an ankle or a wrist or whatever the case is. So for a couple different teams at our company, they all use this guide. It's a live document. So if I go in and change something, it's already there. But the problem is it's a 60-page document, and they're having to leave the CRM to go search through this document. So if they want to look at, a wrist, that's all the way down at the bottom, and they have to go search for it every single time. And they're usually looking at multiple disabilities at once. So they're constantly scrolling up and down, trying to find the information. So what we did was turn that into smaller pieces of information. So now every single disability is its own spec, its own little learning content. So when they're working on an ankle, there's the little spec icon right next to ankle, and they click on it and it tells them exactly what they need to know.
Yeah. You talked a little bit earlier, you said, make it the main thing. And one of my favorite phrases is the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. And it's when you can say in an organization, we have a single source of truth. Like I have been at plenty of orgs where we say like, look, the source of truth is this 300-page document. That's the source of truth. And yet, even when you think you have a single source of truth, if your single source of truth isn't meeting your employees where they are with the information that they need at their fingertips from that source of truth, then it's actually not the single source of truth. And it's not the main thing. And people try to find workarounds just to get to what they need. Because look, employees care about what they need today to get the job done. Like that is what they care about. And if you don't make it easy for them to get there, they're going to create shortcuts. They're going to make mistakes. And your customers are going to pay for that. And then your company is going to pay for that.
Yep.
So the solution here, as simplistic as it sounds, is you have to create efficiencies for documenting internal processes. And those have to be individual user facing. Every employee has to interact with your policies in a very, very different way. And they do different things with them. So one static document that speaks to all actually speaks to none. You have to deliver those processes and then be able to make sure that they are adhered to. And that's not just saying, hey, did you read that? Right? Because people all the time be like, yeah, I totally read it. You're like, say one thing tell me one thing that it said. And they're like, I will read it again. So how you actually make sure that they're adhered to. Does the tool that you purchase give you data to be able to see who has consumed what and when, and even challenge if they can regurgitate the information, right? Is anybody else in the room terrible with names? I am terrible. I can look you in the face and you can tell me your name. And immediately once you said your name, I was like, it's gone. It's gone. Right? So it's this, how do you get that level of adherence in a world where it is so hard to retain because we are constantly getting information? And I'll tell you right now, the solution is not memorize everything, because that's what it used to be, right? Is like go to training and then memorize it and then spit it out. And that doesn't work. In reality, you don't have to memorize it, right? We can evolve with time.
Yes.
Our last challenge of the day, right? How to maintain effective communication and collaboration. I'm going to say the age-old dusty thing. everyone at every organization, SMB or not, is working in silos. And trying to communicate to each other just to make sure that we're on the same page is difficult when you're an org of 30 people. And then that only gets worse and becomes impossible when you become an org of 300 or 3,000 or, heaven forbid, 30,000, when you're not able to figure out a way to effectively communicate to your peers and across to other departments and how to actually collaborate. So as you think about this idea as your company is growing of collaboration, so important in the work that you are doing, how does getting the right tool in place actually help you collaborate and communicate so that you can expand as an organization?
Yeah, it helps in a lot of ways. And effective communication and collaboration also has a lot to do with being efficient. So I feel like these two things go hand in hand. You mentioned having a single source of truth, and getting your employees to adopt to that is huge. And so with Spekit being the single source of truth, we can integrate with Slack, and when someone reaches out for a question, we just send them the spec for that information. So they're constantly hearing, did you read the spec? Did you read the spec? Have you looked in Spekit? And so after a while, that becomes their first step, is to look at spec. And we know that the information that's in Spekit is up to date and accurate because it's our single source of truth. There's also, like I said before, either the Chrome extension or adding domains to different specs, so that no matter where they're at or what they're doing, there are specs there to help them. Even if it's as simple as, how do I add my signature to my Outlook profile, which is a question that's asked way more than you would think it should be.
I believe it. And yet, yes.
So that is huge, just having it everywhere that it needs to be, and having that information available no matter what the employees are doing or what program they're in. Another huge thing is being able to assign experts to different topics. So we have lots of different processes, and trying not to have those siloed, we can assign an expert to a specific process, like say the 5150 call process, someone who knows that really well and they are involved in the updates and know what's going on. We assign them to that spec. So whoever's looking at the spec for 5150 calls, maybe they don't have the information from it that they thought they would. They can reach out specifically to that expert instead of, asking their team and then asking their manager and then just searching around for the information. They just go directly to the person who knows the answers to those questions, and then using spec analytics to figure out what we're creating and is it working. We can look at which specs are viewed the most or which ones have the most reactions, so we can know what's working and what's not, and continue to improve over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in a world where so many employees are really, really remote, collaboration has gotten difficult. And there are certainly tools out there that are solely a collaboration tool. Like we mentioned Slack, right? I have it up here on the screen. Slack is an amazing tool to be able to communicate, but communication is only half the battle, right? We can easily communicate to each other, but can we capture that communication and can we translate that across other departments? Can we take little bits of knowledge and policy and ideation and troubleshooting that exists locked within these channels and find some way to scale that information so that you don't answer the same question in Slack 15 times? Envision a world where you answer a question one time. And then you capture that in a system. And every time somebody asks that same question, you can just relaunch that same answer to them. So it's this idea of, yes, we are communicating, but communication and collaboration are cousins of each other. They don't always lead to one place. So you have to find a way wherever your employees are talking to each other to bring them together and actually allow for easily shared learnings, but also specific, because it becomes noise when you're in any kind of a channel where people are talking about something that just isn't relevant to your role. And as great as it is for them, When you start hearing things that aren't relevant to you and what you have to know right now, block it out. You don't want to hear it, right? And then you block out everything. So everything that you listed there, I think is unbelievably valuable. And we've gone through a lot, right? Like we just spent the last 40 minutes just talking through a lot of the challenges that we face and the fact that there are ways to overcome these if you are willing to shop for them the right way and identify what you need and really buy or build, because build is also always an option, right? When we're looking to scale, we're either going to buy a tool, we're going to build a tool, and know what you need that's going to scale for today and tomorrow. I think you did an incredible job talking through what that looks like at your organization. Does anybody in the room have any questions, anything they want to ask to me or Mikayla? Is everybody just getting ready to like get in their costumes and go get weird? All of that's good. Gonna give it a couple of moments. I feel like everyone's questions have been so answered today. So I want to thank everyone for joining. There's definitely going to be what looks like a little bit of time back in your day. Yeah, Gina, let's get weird. It's Halloween. Let's do it. Can we get you Spekit swag? Absolutely. Anybody who wants Spekit swag, you know where to find me. Ian. Ooh, Ian's got a question. Wait, can you talk about how adoption is one part of change management? Ooh, Mikayla, do you want to take it or should I?
I can give it a shot. Yeah.
Give it a shot. Give the old college try.
Yeah. I mean, what is the benefit of change if no one adopts to it? There's no point. So getting your employees and your team and your whole company to adopt to a change, I think, is the most important part of change management. And I think the biggest way to get adoption is to show people what's in it for them. They don't want to see the challenge ahead of the change. They don't want to see what's going to be different. They just want to know how it's going to benefit them and in their job.
See, such a good answer. And if I were to build upon that, I would actually say that adoption is not the end goal of change management. Adoption is actually the first goal of change management, because you don't actually know if the change that you implemented is the right change until everybody has adopted that change. And then you can measure the results along a long enough period of time. And so most people, when they go and they approach change management, it's we're going to make a change and then we need everybody to adopt it. And then the change was successful. And no, you actually haven't made the change until it was adopted. And now that it's adopted, now you have to measure it. And now you have to look at data. And now you have to look at outcomes. And now you have to determine, did you make a pivot in the right direction or do you have to change again? And so, you know, Ian, to the point of that question, if you don't adopt change quickly and you don't have a way to do that, the way that you are slowing down your org is absolutely immeasurable. And if your end goal for change is just adopting the change, it's so short-sighted. That was an incredible question.
That's a great point.
You know, we're just making them today. We're making all the great points. Any other questions from anybody out there in Cyberland? And if not, we are going to wish all of you a wonderful, wonderful, safe rest of your day, and hope that you are not strangers and connect with me and Mikayla. We are here. I'm just going to offer up your time, Mikayla. Hope that's cool. We're here for whatever questions that you have now or in the future on how to scale efficiently. It's what we're all trying to do. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.